The Greatest, Muhammad Ali by Walter Dean Myers, first published in 2000, is a compelling biography of the legendary heavyweight champion, cultural icon, and outspoken activist Muhammad Ali. At his peak, Ali was not just a dominant force in the boxing ring, he was one of the most recognized and influential figures in the world. Although Myers completed the book long before Ali's death in 2016, it captures the arc of a remarkable life, even as the boxer made only a few public appearances in his final years. The biography opens with the stunning moment in 1964 when a young Cassius Clay, as he was then known, defeated the formidable Charles "Sonny" Liston to claim the heavyweight title. The victory sent shockwaves through the boxing world, as Liston failed to answer the bell for the 7th round, and the crowd erupted in disbelief and celebration. Myers then transports readers to Ali's childhood in Louisville, Kentucky, where he was raised in a supportive family and surrounded by positive community influences. Despite this, he also experienced the harsh realities of racial segregation and discrimination. Ali discovered boxing at the age of 12, and by 18, he had become a national sensation after winning a gold medal at the 1960 Olympic Games in Rome. As a professional boxer, Ali became known not only for his speed and skill in the ring but also for his brash and charismatic personality. Dubbed the Louisville Lip for his non-stop banter and self-promotion, Ali drew both admiration and criticism. His association with the Nation of Islam, a group known for its critique of systemic racism and opposition to the nonviolent approach of leaders like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., further polarized public opinion. Shortly after his victory over Liston, Ali publicly embraced the Nation of Islam and adopted the name Muhammad Ali. Though he successfully defended his title multiple times, he was stripped of it in 1967 when he refused to be drafted into the U.S. military, citing his religious beliefs and opposition to the Vietnam War. Ali returned to boxing in 1970, but his comeback was not without challenges. He suffered his first professional loss to Joe Frazier, who had become champion during Ali's forced absence. Frazier later lost the title to George Foreman, and in one of Ali's most iconic victories, he reclaimed the crown by defeating Foreman in the legendary Rumble in the Jungle in Kinshasa, Zaire. His epic rematch with Frazier in 1975, known as the Thrilla in Manila, ended in another hard-fought triumph. In the years that followed, Ali's performance declined, and he eventually retired from the sport in 1981. Not long after, he began to show signs of Parkinson's disease, although the link between his neurological symptoms and his boxing career remains debated. Despite retreating from the spotlight due to his illness, Ali's stature continued to grow. When he passed away in 2016, tributes poured in from around the world, celebrating a life defined not only by athletic greatness but also by courage, conviction, and an unwavering belief in justice. Book summary. Historical background, boxing and civil rights. Sports in America have long been deeply intertwined with politics and social power. Top athletes often become cultural icons, especially for young people, and are central to industries like media, marketing, and merchandise. Society frequently expects these athletes to serve as role models, aligning with dominant norms to avoid controversy and maintain their marketability. In the 20th century, when political and economic control was largely held by white Americans, the rise of exceptional black athletes was seen as a direct challenge to white supremacist ideologies. Before Jackie Robinson broke Major League Baseball's color barrier in 1947, nearly all major sports were segregated. Boxing, however, posed a unique challenge to racial barriers due to its global nature. White America couldn't stop Jack Johnson, a talented black boxer, from facing and defeating Canadian Tommy Burns for the world heavyweight title in Australia in 1908. Boxing has always carried intense symbolic weight, especially in matters of race and ethnicity. Its one-on-one format and violent intensity create the perception that the victor is unquestionably superior. The heavyweight champion, in particular, is often seen as the world's toughest man. Johnson's confidence, luxurious lifestyle, and relationships with white women defied social norms and infuriated many white Americans. Still, some accepted his reign, clinging to the hope that a white boxer would eventually defeat him and restore their perceived racial hierarchy. But when Jim Jeffries, the so-called Great White Hope, lost to Johnson in a 15-round bout in 1910, it triggered violent riots across the U.S. resulting in at least 20 deaths. After Johnson lost his title in 1915, no black boxer would fight for the heavyweight crown for over 2 decades. That changed with Joe Louis, born Joseph Louis Barrow, who kept his boxing career hidden from his mother by adopting a different name. Louis rose through the boxing ranks until suffering a stunning loss to German fighter Max Schmeling in 1936. The Nazi regime touted Schmeling's victory as proof of Aryan superiority. Despite the racism prevalent in the U.S., many Americans rallied behind Lewis to defeat Schmeling and reclaim national pride. In their 1938 rematch, Lewis demolished Schmeling in just over 2 minutes, becoming a patriotic symbol and national hero. During World War II, Lewis joined the U.S. Army and boxed in exhibition matches to boost soldier morale. His quote, "We'll win, because we're on God's side," became widely known. Over the next 12 years, Lewis successfully defended his title 25 times, helping the American public grow accustomed to the idea of a black heavyweight champion. Other black champions followed, including Ezzard Charles, Jersey Joe Walcott, Floyd Patterson, and Sonny Liston. Still, unlike Johnson or Ali, these men generally avoided political statements or aligned themselves with the prevailing establishment. Muhammad Ali stood apart. While he followed in the footsteps of fighters like Johnson and Lewis, Ali used his fame not just to fight in the ring, but to fight for his beliefs. He would redefine what it meant to be both an athlete and a political figure in American culture. Part 1, Cassius Clay. Introduction Summary. As a young boy growing up in Harlem, Walter Dean Myers looked up to legendary black boxers like Sugar Ray Robinson and Joe Louis, icons who were occasionally spotted in his neighborhood. But it was watching Cassius Clay claim Olympic gold in boxing at the 1960 Games in Rome that truly captured Myers' imagination. That young athlete, who would later become Muhammad Ali, sparked a lifelong fascination not only for his prowess in the ring but for his boldness and impact far beyond it. Though Myers acknowledges Ali's imperfections and the devastating physical consequences of his boxing career, he makes clear that this biography views Ali through the lens of legend. For Myers, Ali symbolizes something much greater: a fighter in every sense of the word, an American hero, a champion for justice, and a man who stood tall in the face of overwhelming odds. This is the Muhammad Ali who earned Myers' admiration, and who continues to inspire him. Preface Summary: Float like a butterfly. In the lead-up to his legendary bout against Sonny Liston, Cassius Clay, who had not yet taken the name Muhammad Ali, behaved in such an unpredictable and animated way that many assumed he was frightened, perhaps even ready to back out of the fight. With his close friend Drew Bundini Brown at his side, they shouted their now iconic mantra, "Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee." Liston, the reigning heavyweight champion, had an intimidating presence, a powerful, muscular frame and a reputation as a former mob enforcer. Compared to him, the tall, slender, and brash young Clay seemed outmatched, and few gave him a real chance. Once the bell rang, however, Clay's extraordinary speed and agility stunned the crowd. He darted around the ring with ease, evading Liston's punishing blows and snapping back with quick, light jabs. By the end of the second round, Liston had a small cut near his eye, but things changed dramatically in the fourth round. Clay began pawing at his eyes in distress, clearly in pain. Back in his corner, he frantically pleaded with his trainer, Angelo Dundee, to stop the fight, shouting that he couldn't see. But Dundee urged him back into the ring, and Clay spent the next round avoiding Liston's attacks as best he could. By the sixth round, Clay's vision returned, and Liston, who was used to finishing opponents early, was visibly exhausted. Then, to everyone's astonishment, Liston refused to continue. Sitting on his stool between rounds, he spit out his mouthguard, a clear signal of surrender. Clay erupted with joy, dancing across the ring, his victory solidifying the arrival of a new force in boxing. Across the ring, a stunned Liston looked on, unsure of what just hit him, both literally and figuratively. Part 1, Chapter 1 Summary: A Boxer's Dream. A month after the United States entered World War II, Cassius and Odessa Clay welcomed their son, Cassius Jr. Named after a renowned abolitionist. Cassius Sr. worked as a sign painter in Louisville, Kentucky, while Odessa was employed as a maid. Though they weren't impoverished, like all black families of the time, they faced the harsh realities of segregation, enduring both social and systemic discrimination that kept black people separate from white society and offered them inferior services and opportunities. Young Cassius was known for being shy, well-behaved, and a good kid with a sensitivity to injustice. At the age of 12, after his bike was stolen by a thief outside a store, Clay was devastated, especially since his family couldn't afford to replace it. Determined to get justice, he sought out a local police officer, Joe Martin, and insisted that he wanted to confront the thief. Martin, a boxing coach, took Clay to his gym, where the young boy showed little athletic ability but an immense drive and dedication. Clay's boxing journey continued as he began training with Fred Stoner, a black man committed to providing positive outlets for young black boys through sports. By the time he was 16, Clay had dropped out of school and began amassing an impressive collection of amateur boxing trophies, including 2 National Golden Gloves championships. His talent and determination led him to the 1960 Olympics in Rome, where he competed in the light heavyweight division, 178 pounds. In the final match, he faced the seasoned and formidable Zbigniew Peterzakowski. Initially, Clay struggled to stay mobile against his opponent, but he soon stood firm and fought back with powerful punches, ultimately securing a victory. Winning the gold medal catapulted him to fame, a stark contrast to the oppressive segregation he had long experienced. His success caught the attention of an all-white investment firm, the Louisville Sporting Group, which offered to sponsor Clay's professional career, giving him the financial support to focus solely on boxing. Part 1, Chapter 2 Summary, The Hard Fight. Clay's first trainer, Archie Moore, was a seasoned fighter who had spent years striving for recognition and fair compensation in his own career. Moore knew that Clay needed to prepare for the harsh realities of professional boxing, where knockouts were frequent, and the risk of severe injury was ever present. Moore aimed to teach Clay defensive techniques, such as using his arms and shoulders to absorb punches, in an effort to minimize the damage. However, Clay was confident in his exceptional speed and athleticism and believed he could outsmart his opponents by studying their styles and exploiting their weaknesses. This self-assuredness, however, soon proved to be at odds with Moore's approach, as Clay's perspective on his abilities conflicted with the defensive strategies Moore sought to instill in him. Part 1, Chapter 3 Summary, The Greatest. As Clay racked up victories and accolades in the boxing world, the United States became increasingly involved in the military conflict in South Vietnam, while the civil rights movement gained momentum, fueled by the Supreme Court's ruling in Brown v. Topeka Board of Education that mandated the desegregation of public schools. Clay, with his striking good looks and quick wit, earned the nickname, the Louisville Lip, and quickly became an unconventional figure in boxing. Many critics compared him unfavorably to Joe Louis, the revered black champion of the 1930s and 1940s, who maintained an image of quiet patriotism and became a national hero after defeating the German Max Schmeling on the eve of World War II. When Sonny Liston claimed the championship in 1962 by knocking out Floyd Patterson in a single round, few believed that Clay would ever pose a serious challenge, let alone defeat him. However, Clay's decisive win over his former mentor, Archie Moore, put him in the spotlight as he sought a big match to prove his worthiness to face Liston. During this time, he attended an event held by the Nation of Islam in Detroit, where he met leader Elijah Muhammad and spokesman Malcolm X. Their influence deepened his interest in civil rights issues and led him to question U.S. involvement in Vietnam, though his ambition to succeed as a fighter remained a driving force. Part 1, Chapter 4 Summary, The Price of Fame. Clay enjoyed predicting the exact rounds in which he would defeat his opponents, although his predictions were not always accurate. He showed signs of vulnerability in a lackluster performance against Doug Jones and even suffered a knockdown against Englishman Henry Cooper, though he managed to stop Cooper in the following round, partly aided by trainer Angelo Dundee deliberately creating a split in his glove to buy extra time for recovery while repairing it. As Clay became an increasing source of public fascination, he also began taking a more active interest in the political landscape, openly criticizing the nonviolent approach of Martin Luther King, Jr. He found greater appeal in the Nation of Islam's message that the black community had the resources to establish a separate nation, independent from the white community. The year 1963 was a pivotal one for Black America. In June, civil rights leader Medgar Evers was assassinated outside his home, and in August, the historic March on Washington took place, culminating in Dr. King's iconic, "I Have a Dream" speech. Shortly after, on November 22, President John F. Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas. For years, America had expected its athletes, especially black ones, to remain apolitical, but these turbulent times called for action. Clay, who had already gained attention for his outspoken personality, began to use his voice to do more than just taunt his opponents, taking a bold stand on the political issues of the day. Part 2, Muhammad Ali. Part 2, Chapter 5 Summary, The Championship. As Clay ascended the ranks of the heavyweight division, he faced growing criticism for his ties to the Nation of Islam, an organization known for its strong denunciations of white America. This notoriety only heightened the appeal of a potential fight with Liston, and a deal was struck for Clay to challenge for the title in February 1964 in Miami Beach. Clay used his usual playful antics to deflect Liston's attempts at intimidation, even dismissing Liston's experience by claiming the champion was simply too old. Clay's victory was so unexpected that many suspected foul play, but he proved his critics wrong. Shortly after the fight, Clay announced that he had converted to the Nation of Islam and would now be known as Muhammad Ali. Many sports writers rejected this new identity, claiming that he had been manipulated into joining the nation and that it would use Ali as a symbol of racial hostility. Boxing, like all sports, was deeply entwined with racial politics, and a black champion like Ali was seen as a direct challenge to white supremacy. His affiliation with the nation made his win even more provocative, with many reporters now casting Liston as the good guy who would punish Ali for his political and religious beliefs. In February 1965, Malcolm X, a former member of the nation who had split with the group the year before, was assassinated in Harlem. Fearing that an Ali fight might attract conflicting factions, the rematch with Liston was moved to a youth center in Lewiston, Maine. On fight night, Ali appeared physically more imposing than the older Liston, and within a minute of the first round, Liston was on the mat and didn't rise. The image of Ali standing triumphantly over Liston became one of boxing's most iconic moments. Ali's next opponent was the former champion Floyd Patterson, who had publicly expressed nothing but contempt for the black Muslims and what they stood for. Ali faced Patterson in November, seemingly stretching the fight out on purpose to inflict as much punishment as possible before stopping him in the 12th round. Part 2, Chapter 6 Summary, What's My Name? The 1960s were a time of significant social upheaval in America, marked by widespread protests against the Vietnam War, a burgeoning counterculture fueled by rock and roll, and a growing black resistance to segregation and other forms of systemic racism. Members of the Nation of Islam, including Ali, responded to racism by changing their names, which they saw as remnants of slavery. For example, Malcolm Little adopted the name X to represent the unknown nature of his African heritage. As Ali defended his heavyweight title multiple times, the civil rights movement became increasingly militant, and for many Americans, the young fighter from Louisville, Kentucky represented all that was wrong with the era. Ali's controversial stance grew even more intense when he requested an exemption from the military draft, citing his opposition to the Vietnam War on moral and religious grounds. The draft board denied his request, and when Ali attended the induction ceremony, he refused to step forward when his name, Cassius Marcellus Clay, was called. As a result, Ali was fined $10,000, sentenced to 5 years in prison, and stripped of his heavyweight title. Part 2, Chapter 7 Summary, A Fighter's Exile. Ali faced widespread condemnation for refusing to be inducted into the army, and every state in America revoked his boxing license. During this period, he began speaking at Nation of Islam events and college campuses, emphasizing that he was not racist but still critical of racial integration. The hope for a more integrated America suffered a severe blow with the assassination of Martin Luther King, Jr. on April 4, 1968, in Memphis. Meanwhile, the Vietnam War, which King had opposed in the final year of his life, continued to claim lives. In Ali's absence from the ring, sports became a platform for resistance. Most famously, 2 sprinters raised their fists in the Black Power salute during the 1968 Olympics in Mexico City. Over time, as more and more people found Ali's views less bothersome, promoters arranged for his return to boxing. Ali faced a tough Irish-American fighter named Jerry Quarry. Although Ali's speed had diminished, he still showcased his sharp boxing skills. When Quarry attempted to attack, Ali countered with powerful punches that opened up a significant cut above Quarry's eye, forcing the fight to be stopped. This victory marked the official start of Ali's comeback. Part 2, Chapter 8 Summary, The Cruelest Sport. For most boxers, the sport is a means of survival rather than wealth. They are responsible for purchasing their own equipment, covering trainer and manager fees, and often earn little from prize money. Promoters often inflate the amount of revenue a fight generates to attract more viewers, creating unrealistic expectations about a fighter's earnings. Ali, however, made himself highly profitable not just through his victories but by becoming a source of entertainment. His clever use of the media, particularly television and its sponsors, helped generate the increased revenue that all fighters would benefit from in the future. Despite earning significant sums, boxing remains a brutal way to make a living. Punches, particularly from heavyweights, can cause severe and long-lasting damage to the body, including potentially permanent harm to the brain and other internal organs. Whether boxing can ever be made safe is a matter of debate, and only the fighters themselves truly understand the cost of their profession. Part 3, The People's Champion. Part 3, Chapter 9 Summary, Ali vs. Frazier. Joe Frazier, born into a poor farming family, was a true fighter with a relentless, aggressive style and a powerful left hook. In addition to boxing, he supported his family by working in a Philadelphia slaughterhouse, which inspired the famous scene in the movie Rocky where the character practices by hitting slabs of meat. With Ali sidelined, Frazier captured the vacant title in 1968, driven by a desire to gain a kind of respect that a black man with little education couldn't get anywhere else. He built an undefeated record against top competition, but many would not recognize him as the true champion until he defeated Ali. When Ali made his return to boxing, the two agreed to fight at Madison Square Garden on March 8, 1971. Although they had known each other for years, and Frazier had supported Ali during his conversion to Islam and exile from the sport, Ali's cruel taunts before the fight, calling Frazier an Uncle Tom who served the white establishment, left Frazier feeling betrayed. On fight night, Ali connected with punch after punch, but Frazier's relentless attack and devastating left hook began to take their toll. Ali mounted a brief comeback, but in the 15th and final round, Frazier's left hook sent Ali to the canvas. Ali quickly rose and finished the fight, but Frazier won by unanimous decision. Despite his loss, Ali fought courageously and maintained his defiance against his critics. To many, he remained the people's champion. Part 3, Chapter 10 Summary, Comeback. Even after his loss to Frazier, Ali remained as charismatic as ever and continued to represent black beauty and pride as he entered his 30s. He was no longer just a boxer but a symbol for young black Americans, showing them a new path forward, one that didn't rely on begging for rights but instead depended on the strength of the black community. However, the civil rights movement lost some of its momentum after the tragic assassinations of its key leaders and the election of Richard Nixon. Despite the setback of the Frazier loss, Ali rebounded in 1971 when the Supreme Court overturned his conviction for refusing the draft, affirming his status as a conscientious objector. Ali continued to win fights, though many of his victories were unimpressive, leading some to believe his career might be nearing its end. In March 1973, he suffered another defeat at the hands of Ken Norton, who broke Ali's jaw in the second round, though Ali hung on and finished the fight. The year 1973 was notable for other reasons as well. American troops finally returned home from Vietnam after nearly 2 decades, bringing an end to the war that had claimed over 58,000 American lives. Meanwhile, the public learned of the Watergate scandal, which implicated President Nixon in a break-in at the Democratic National Committee headquarters. Frazier, too, lost his title, falling to the fierce young challenger George Foreman in a brutal 2-round bout. Despite his losses, Ali's fame and influence remained strong. Before he could challenge for the title again, though, he would first have to face Frazier in a rematch, set to take place in Madison Square Garden, almost exactly a year after their first fight. Part 3, Chapter 11 Summary, Smokin' Joe vs. the Legend. Frazier's victory over Ali had clearly taken a severe toll on him, and he only fought occasionally against lesser opponents after that. When Foreman obliterated Frazier, it marked the end of Frazier's prime. His personal animosity toward Ali fueled his motivation for their rematch, but by this point, Frazier could no longer sustain the relentless pace he had in their first fight, and he lacked the power to land the decisive punches necessary for another victory. With the rematch behind them, the score between Ali and Frazier was now even. At this point, Myers pauses the narrative and asks, who was the real Ali? Growing up under the oppressive system of segregation, Ali had learned to view authority figures as perpetrators of abuse and public institutions as sites of humiliation. He had witnessed the rise of Joe Louis, only to see the government hound him for tax payments, forcing him to fight beyond his prime until he was ultimately knocked out by Rocky Marciano. He had seen civil rights leaders gunned down, as well as college students shot by the National Guard during protests against the Vietnam War. Myers argues that, above all, Ali was a fighter, highlighting his ability to endure immense physical pain when necessary, taking punishment and continuing to fight when others would have failed. The true test of Ali's spirit and identity would come when he faced George Foreman in Kinshasa, Zaire, in October 1974. Part 3, Chapter 12 Summary, Rumble in the Jungle. Ali was clearly past his physical prime, while the 25-year-old George Foreman was a juggernaut, needing only 2 rounds each to dispatch both men who had beaten Ali, Frazier and Norton. The government of Zaire put up the largest purse in history, $5 million per fighter, and the fighters arrived to enormous fanfare and media coverage. The locals much preferred Ali, seeing him as the real black champion, as he mixed with the crowds and talked about political issues, while Foreman was more reclusive. Foreman suffered a cut while sparring, delaying the fight several weeks, but on the night of October 30th, the moment had arrived. Ali's entourage was in low spirits, fearing that their men would suffer a terrible beating, and Foreman looked ready for blood. Everyone expected Ali to move away from Foreman's power, but instead, he went on the offensive, peppering him with jabs and denying Foreman time to set up his devastating right hand. In the second round, Ali rested on the ropes, intentionally absorbing body blows, taking most of them on his arms and shoulders, and sneaking punches each time Foreman tried to rest and set up a big punch. Foreman grew frustrated and tired, trying and failing to land a knockout blow. In the 8th round, Ali pounced on him and brought him to the canvas with a volley of punches. Foreman did not beat the count, and Ali was once again heavyweight champion of the world. Part 4, A Career Ends. Part 4, Chapter 13 Summary, The Ring Warrior. After several defenses against relatively modest opposition, the public was clamoring for a rubber match, tiebreaker, between Ali and Frazier, which, unlike their second fight, would be for the heavyweight crown. It was set for September 30, 1975, just outside Manila in the Philippines. Frazier remained bitterly resentful at Ali having denied him the status he had worked so hard to earn. Ali's taunting of Frazier was particularly cruel, as he called him a gorilla due to his very dark skin and an Uncle Tom to turn black people against him. Both men were at the twilights of their careers, but they were eager for one last showdown with one another. They knew what they were capable of doing to one another and that one was capable of sending the other into retirement and a lifetime of pain. When the fight began, Frazier came in as he always did, and Ali tried the rope-a-dope, pegging Frazier's head while absorbing painful blows to the body. Each inflicted enormous pain on the other, but unlike the second fight, Frazier did not tire, and in the middle rounds, he unleashed his left hook over and over again. Ali's legs were buckling, but he kept throwing just enough punches to create major swelling around Frazier's eyes. Soon, Frazier could no longer see the punches coming at him, and over his vociferous objections, Frazier's corner stopped the fight with only one round to go. Ali describes his hard-won victory as the next thing to dying. Frazier and Ali gained a new respect for one another, but none would ever be able to repeat what they had accomplished that night. Part 4, Chapter 14 Summary, Sting Like a Bee. As a young fighter, Ali's quick feet and peerless athleticism kept him from getting hurt. As he aged and could not move quite as fast, he started to absorb more punishment, and Ali made up for his diminishing physical skills with extraordinary courage, matching the courage he had shown in standing up for his beliefs when it would have been far easier, and more profitable, to avoid any controversial stances. Ali never dodged a fighter, even the most feared among the heavyweight ranks, but this also contributed to his eventual decline. In 1978, he lost to the relatively inexperienced and vastly less skilled Leon Spinks, but he won a rematch with Spinks to regain the title a third time, setting a record. This would prove to be his last victory. He retired and then came back to fight Larry Holmes, a former sparring partner who had won the title in his absence. Holmes dealt a horrific beating to Ali, leading to the only stoppage loss of his career, and then Ali lost again to the middling Trevor Berbick. After 21 years in the professional ring, Ali would retire for good. Part 4, Chapter 15 Summary, The Fight of His Life. For the 1996 Summer Olympics, Muhammad Ali emerged to light the torch, his hands trembling and his legendary mouth silent. Having electrified the entire world with his athleticism and personality, Ali was now severely diminished due to his having developed Parkinson's disease. The illness is characterized by near-constant tremors, especially in the hands, slow movements, and stiffness in other parts of the body. Actor Michael J. Fox is another famous person with the disease, as well as former Pope John Paul II. It is possible that boxing contributed to Ali's symptoms, but this is uncertain. Regardless of the cause, Ali joined a long list of legendary fighters whose later years were marked by severe pain, but he used his still enormous fame to raise awareness for the disease and direct more federal research toward finding a cure. Part 4, Chapter 16 Summary, The Legacy. The legacy of Muhammad Ali, named Greatest Athlete of the Century by Sports Illustrated, is a combination of his life, the times he inhabited, and the subsequent evaluations of history. Cassius Clay grew up in a world in which the struggle with self-hatred was often marked by hair straighteners and skin bleachers, tools used to erase racial heritage rather than fight inequality. Ali not only owned his blackness but also made a public issue out of it, calling himself pretty and beautiful, and encouraging young people to think similarly of themselves. Many doubted that this boastful man could be nearly as good as he said he was, but his actions matched his words, first stunning the world with his win over Sonny Liston and then sticking to his convictions, even at great cost. His refusal to join the army could easily have put him in jail or ended his career permanently, and his refusal helped to inspire resistance to an unjust war. Ali was a flawed man. He was divorced 3 times, his 4th wife would remain with him until his death, and he was not an especially attentive father to his 7 daughters. He publicly humiliated his opponents, especially Frazier. Yet in both life and the ring, he showed an extraordinary mix of intelligence and courage, encouraging black pride and showing a particular kindness toward children. While boxing is a major part of his legend, he showed that fighting is not the only way to secure human dignity. 159. Perhaps the most important example he showed over the course of his extraordinary life was his consistent willingness to do the right thing.